Hello, Jade, and welcome to the future of your ex. So happy to have you.
Oh, lovely to be here. Thank you for, having me.
Of course, super excited to dive into many fascinating topics with you. And before we do this deep dive, please do a little intro. So introduce yourself, tell the listeners who you are, what you're doing, where you're coming from.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm Jade. I'm the executive creative director at Huge, working out of New York and primarily on the Google account. And a lot of my focus is around pushing the design craft in all its varieties. But I would say like there is a sort of growing focus around product design, and how we drive creative innovation.
Yeah, I can imagine that now is a fascinating time. Also to work at an agency, to thinking about the future, to thinking about products and clients. So there's a lot going on. A super big topic for you is also designing at scale, so really scaling product and teams. And I would like to dive a little bit deeper into that topic. Maybe you can start by explaining how or what designing at scale actually means for you and for your team.
Yeah, it's an interesting question because I think it's not it's not a simple set of principles, and I think it's around kind of how you can energize the team to build consistency and high quality design, and that's across like a range of platforms and products. So I think it's really unearthing like the best possible workflows, and I think that comes close to how people like to work, right? And
Mhm.
how people will really flourish themselves. So, I think once you can kind of identify that, then it's much easier to build it for the full team to come together. I think if people feel like they can't show up and do things they want to do, or they're not being listened to, then people can come quite disengaged. So I love that about Huge. I think there's a strong emphasis on listen first. It's like one of the core values. And then how we kind of like grow as a team, I think is super interesting. And, even on Google, we're sort of like an 80 person
Crazy.
creative team. Yeah.
So many
So,
people.
so many
Uh,
people. Yeah.
and I mean, as far as I understood, there are basically two parts. One are like the humans, right? Like helping to create a good environment, a good mindset so that people can flourish. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on like how to do that best because that is a big challenge. And the other thing is also the technical part, like scaling products and like integrating the team in those products when like the tools and everything gets much bigger. But I would like to get started on the first part of like how to establish a good environment for your team that teams can really scale because that's a big challenge, especially when you work with 80 people in a team.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting to sort of see how I mean, the beauty of working somewhere like Huge is like if you're at an agency that's like in the top five of like digital design agencies, everyone, it's not like you have to motivate people. People are
Hmm.
showing up, they want to do the best work of their lives. They come onto their laptops and they're excited, they want to do great things. So that bit's great. We don't have any issues there. I think where it gets nuanced is the spirit of collaboration and making sure that we're all feeling like we're going in the direction that we're all comfortable with. And I think what's key there is like making sure that we have regular touch points.
Hmm.
So the daily stand-ups. If people aren't coming, then why aren't they coming? Because we know they're passionate, we know they're talented. So they're either upset about something, or something's not going right in the process there. And I think it's just, yeah, really paying attention to the details around the process and really protecting the time that people have. So if people are voicing they need yeah, another week or something, that we give that to the team to protect the quality of the work. So yeah, I think there's different levers that people can pull, and I think leadership plays a massive role when we're talking about design at scale. Being able to keep people on track and be accountable for, it's a big responsibility to make sure that the work is like the best it can possibly be.
Hmm.
But also being very human and inspiring. Are we regularly engaging with the team, asking, the right kind of questions to push through barriers or struggles, or just to excite and elevate. I think it's such a wonderful process that requires like a mix of things, because of the way creatives and designers like to operate. We like to
Hmm.
have different things to get us going and to keep us going. But for the most part, that I would say there is a lot of discipline that
Yeah.
comes into it. And even for myself, like when I was younger, I played a lot of tennis. I played tennis for my county and coached as well. And I think the athlete mindset always fascinates me, and pairing that with like the artistic mindset or the designer practitioner mindset. And how do we build discipline? Actually, discipline it can be deadly boring, and
Mm.
that's okay. That's actually good that we're, sticking to a plan, and like, sometimes mapping it out and coming up with the plan is like so fun. And then when you get into the sometimes like methodology and the repetition can be super tough. But it's like having to practice your serve over and over again. It's that training and that muscle that you're pursuing that will make the work great. So whether it's like a robust design system or a new interface, visual language that you're coming up with something net new, or new R&D project around an innovation piece, sometimes you feel like, am I progressing? Is it really going? And you just have to keep putting in the time, putting in the hours in the right place around the work. And yeah, it's super tricky, but I think it's such a wonderful journey.
Hmm.
Yeah. And the privilege, I think, for us all to work in this kind of space.
100%. Super fascinating time, super exciting, and yeah, thank you so much for sharing that about like how the team works or what kind of tips you have, especially for design leaders. I'm also curious to hear your thoughts, like a little bit on the design perspective. So you're working with a lot of designers, like junior, mid-level, senior. Like from your experience, what do you think? What does really makes a good designer when it comes to collaboration? Because I know collaboration is a big future skill. All the tech things aside, collaboration is a key skill, but it's very abstract. So how do you collaborate effectively? Do you have some tips, maybe that you, I don't know, got from like one of the best designers you worked with so far?
Yeah, I think for me, it comes down to like three core principles or values. I think again, it's like listen first. If you're
Hmm.
in a project where you need to collaborate, if you're working with AI integration, for example,
Yeah.
you're dealing with different expertise, and sometimes, it's a data analyst, sometimes it's a technical developer, or a strategist. So it's really important that we take that core moment in the kickoff space to bring it all in, and absorb, because that will make the design thinking and our output so much better. So there's that. I think the second one would be stay interested. I think, designers, we tend to love to play in that world. It's such a rich world. Like we want to look at references, we want to get straight in there with like the visual aesthetics and start building out, color palettes and all the exciting things, which of course we have to do. But I think we've got to stay there with the big difficult problems or the things that the other expertise are going through and lean into what their world and what they are trying to bring to the table for digital product, for example, or whatever it might be. And then the third thing is contribute, which is kind of related to the second one. If you're staying interested, then you're more likely to contribute. And sometimes if you're a younger designer, it might not be you might be very interested, but it might come from a place of worry of, oh, am I going to say the right thing in this
Yeah.
room? And even when I was a junior, I was like, should I? You're saying things in your head, and you're like, should I voice it or not? And I would just encourage you to voice it. Even if you get it wrong, it doesn't matter, and you'll learn something in that room, and people will love that. Oh wow, yeah, this person is participating and actively involved, and never forget that you're in the room for a reason. Like people aren't gonna invite you to a workshop and not want you to contribute. They've you've got a seat at the table there to represent design, and that's like such a wonderful gift and something that we have to constantly remind ourselves of the importance of that, I
Yeah.
think.
I think that makes so much sense. And as I think, I mean, I can 100% relate to that. I used to be the same when I was a junior designer. I always thought, like, can I say that? But I feel also curiosity usually leads you to asking more questions than statements. Like, at least,
Yeah.
and this is what I always really love from like junior designers, if they just ask questions, when this curiosity that you mentioned really comes through and you feel like, they are interested, they want to learn, they want to understand, and they don't want to push their design decisions through. Um, but really understand. And this is so difficult, especially right now when it comes to data and development and project management. A lot of things that we as designers don't have a lot of experience in our business, right? So we need to ask questions. And from my experience, I think this is not as like a sign of stupidity, or curiosity is so valuable. So thank you so much for bringing that up. I think
Mhm.
that's a good reminder for all the designers. I think also for us to stay curious. And there are
Yeah.
no stupid questions. So I think
Yeah,
thank you so much
definitely.
for bringing it up.
Yeah.
Super nice. So you already mentioned AI a little bit. And of course, everyone nowadays is talking about AI. AI is everywhere. And I assume also a big topic at Huge. And I'm very curious to now understand a little bit like the technical part of like scaling products and teams. How does it look like? Of course, the first thing you think of are probably design systems, but like how does AI plays into scaling design basically? What are your thoughts on that?
Scaling design. Yeah. I mean, it's it's a fascinating time, isn't it? It's just
Hmm.
like it can come into the process in so many different ways. But yeah, I think in terms of the scalability that it can bring, even things like the Figma plugins, AI Figma plugins are super interesting. We have a really good relationship with Adobe. Many agencies do now because they're bringing out new tools all the time. So whether it's things like Firefly or Substance 3D, I was learning about that this week, and I was like, wow, that's fascinating. And the two tools talk, so that makes it even better. So I think it's a case of making the time to upskill, learn, and to your point on curiosity, this shouldn't feel like a burden, and I think for most people it's not. Most designers and
Hmm.
creators are just very excited, and so with that, as long as we, keep doing that, keep learning and having this open mind, I think it's a lot about testing and learning.
Hmm.
What things can we implement that can support the process and make things better or even make things more understandable, right? Because when we're working to build things like new AI agents that integrate into our websites, it's very complex. It's complex even for our clients, even if they're requesting it. So, how do we use the tools to play back a level of communication that becomes simple to understand the process? I think that's all, a new responsibility for us. And I think if we can spend a little bit of time working through like how we communicate back what we're doing, that helps with the scalability as well. So yeah, I think there's a couple of different things that play into that and how we can use AI to scale.
What do you think are the biggest opportunities and challenges, especially working with AI?
Yeah, I think the biggest opportunity comes into spaces. So what we were just talking about there around the workflows becoming more efficient. And then on the other end of the spectrum, the our creative being enhanced through generative AI to be so we can be more expressive.
Hmm.
Um, so I think, you know, where we might have had a message and be able to bring it to life in the tools that we knew, now we have all these other tools, at our fingertips to really amplify whatever message we want to convey or something beautiful that we want to convey. We can now do it like 10 times better if we
Yeah.
have the time to perfect the tool. So those two things are incredible opportunities, the efficiency side, but also the expressive side that and I find it fascinating that they're almost like polar opposites. And then I think the biggest challenge is the ethics and already like on a personal note, on a more kind of side project piece that I've been working on, that's come up quite sharp. And I think, it's hard because we're excited. People want to move quickly and achieve things and get things out. But I think we do have to take a moment of pause um, to be respectful of people's crafts and how AI kind of affects that. And there's no right or wrong, I would say, at this stage. We're at a point of learning and experimenting, but yeah, on that note, I think there's a lot we can learn. And then equally, even at Huge, we do kind of experiments with different tools. We make our own tools to better efficiency, whether it's things that power how our clients can get data more quickly and bring that to the forefront, or whether it's looking at prototypes around how do we make our writing ability better on key tracks that are very dense in technical knowledge needs. So it's a very kind of
Hmm.
long-winded example, but what was interesting is, different expertise coming together as council to discuss these things. I think that helps bring out like ethically, what are we actually trying to achieve here? We're trying to make the work the best it can possibly be. And that a lot of the time is the ambition. So with that in mind, it's like the ethically the best route forward is when we are enhancing creative capabilities. I think that's when we're really making best use, as far as
Hmm.
I can see anyway, right now, out of AI is like, okay, if we could give people the information they needed quicker through this tool, if we spent time developing it, how much time would this person save? How much better would, yeah, the example of copywriting, like how much better would that be? Then how much faster is it implemented into design? We can be really, specific on word count and whatever we need to perfect like how we want layouts to look. And yeah, so I think there are um, interesting challenges, but I think there's definitely criterias that are bubbling to the top to help us figure out like what is the appropriate use of AI and avoiding just like making deep fakes.
Better. That's definitely better
Yeah.
to avoid that. So do you have a certain process of how you, I don't know, get those initiatives started? So imagine like a client comes to you with like, this is the creative brief. I have a challenge, like a design challenge. And, in the past you used to, I don't know, think about the solutions maybe, and then use Figma and design something, still iterative. But now with AI, where in the different steps of the process of solving the design problem would you integrate AI? Do you already have some kind of like a framework developed, or is it more like on the go, always changing and a lot of iteration?
Yeah, I think there's definitely got to be a lot of iteration to make sure that it's a useful tool. But I think the need actually sometimes at the moment is not necessarily coming from the client. We're sort of looking at we do like lots of fun retros at
Hmm.
Huge, like on Fig Jam or like Miro. I love joining the retros. We put on music, like really set the environment, like have a
Oh,
question, have
really?
2 minutes with music playing. It's so great. And yeah, hats off to the program team who set that up because they definitely make it like a joyful experience. But yeah, and for me, like holistically across a lot of the tracks, and the other kind of peers that I work with, you start to see patterns and you're like, this keeps happening. We keep struggling a little bit here.
Hmm.
We've set allocate this time and we keep going over, or the work's not as good as it should have been. And why is that? And that's usually actually where we can sometimes end up spending a bit of time of like, right, well, what could we prototype here, or what can we do here to make this work better so that we have, better quality work coming out and it's more efficient for the client. And I think that's super fascinating space for creative and sorry agencies to think about, how do we make our performance enhanced through
Hmm.
AI tools that that benefit the client as well.
Because this is a big problem that I'm seeing with a lot of projects. On the one hand, you have like the crazy and fun exploration and the creativity and like, all the fun. And on the other side of the spectrum, you have basically you have KPIs, you have, certain tools like the product needs to scale. And sometimes it's a bit tricky, right? Like to find time for creativity and exploration and seeing, iterating the framework of working with AI and for AI, and then also like scaling things and having like measurable results and KPIs. Like,
Yeah.
how do you balance that?
Yeah, it's I think it comes down to like a rhythm,
Mm,
even the word workflow, I love it because there's flow in it. And
yeah.
that's what's got to happen. We've got to kind of lean into that. Like nothing is ever going to be static again, I don't think, for design. It's always going to be dynamic, flexible. The AI is now doing this. What are we going to do about it? It's doing, and so I think getting into that spirit of being able to move around different challenges that come up is going to be super important. And so yeah, I think it's a case of sort of bringing out a kind of a dynamic creative solution at the right time. So I think like there's key milestones in every project. And I think it's making sure that in that milestone, before we're signing off and moving on, whether it's um, sign off of a look and feel or sign off of these sticker sheet or tokenization set, is like, is this exactly where we wanted it to be?
Mhm.
And then moving forward, yeah, I think it's a very kind of iterative process and fine tuning, and just like how you'd have a guitar and fine tune it. I think that's how we should sort of see our design. It can't be. I think, yeah, like most, when you're most in the flow and enjoying your practice, um, it's not really like cooking from a recipe book. It's
Yeah.
like, this is my favorite dish, and I'm gonna put this in, and actually a bit of spice here, and I think that's how yeah, how hopefully the future will be, is we have an element of that.
Yeah, I mean, that's so true. And I personally love this approach of like iterating and like always changing environments. But I also know that there are some people out there that it's just their personality types who really like to have a structure. They like to have a recipe and they also like to follow the same recipe. And I feel, especially for these kind of people, it gets more and more difficult in times like these where you always need to adapt and you always need to change. Not sure, maybe you think of like some people in your team who are, those kind of people, like people who really like to have a recipe. What kind of tip would you give to them to lean a little bit more into the exploration part, but still having a structure? Although there is no structure anymore, which can be overwhelming, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think you just have to be a little bit cautious of how AI loves to automate. And
Hmm.
so if there's parts of the design process that you could use something to kind of like, okay, I need to move everything 5 pixels here on Figma across all these different assets along, and there's a way you can just, hey, I'm going to switch that, or everything actually needs to be this color palette and I want to try it. If you go in and manually do that, then is it the best use of your time? Um, maybe, arguably people will say, the physical form of writing actively helps you work things through. I don't think that
Mm.
will ever go away. So there could be designers out there that's like, actually, if I manually do this, I'm going to think through what I really wanted to do. And I think that's okay. I think, yeah, to your point, like there has to be a balance. And yeah, a lot of brilliant design comes from having those boundaries and yeah, discipline, I suppose, as well. But I think just being cautious of where you're enjoying the organization and the methodical process. And I think again it comes back to that flow. It's like, okay, we've gotten it up to this point, and now we want to test this thing. Actually, would it be okay if we just used AI to like automate, or a tool or a plugin to automate that to get to the result quicker? And then it's like we flow back in and like, what am I doing next? I think yeah, it's yeah, I think it's still a balance, but I just be a little bit cautious of the accuracy of automate, yeah, the autonomous part of AI.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, 100. I mean, also AI is still in its very early stages. This is something that we shouldn't forget. I mean, for us, it's so fascinating to see how we can chat with ChatGPT, how Midjourney creates images for us, or like, I don't know,
Yeah,
how we enter a prompt and then a video is generated. I mean, that's fascinating, right? Like, at least for me, every time I'm like, wow, this is amazing.
yeah,
But still, this is so early, and this is like it does so many mistakes. And still, with ChatGPT, for example, I mean, I'm using it every day, every single day for the last 2 years or so, and it still does mistakes. It still does
yeah,
mistakes and hallucinates. And I'm seeing that, I'm like, need to remind it, like, don't do this mistake. So. We need to have
Yeah.
this oversight and critical thinking. And as you mentioned, like also think like, does it make sense to even automate it, or should I rather do it myself? Is AI even like good enough to do the task? And also, do I know how do I prompt AI to do it? Is there an
Yeah.
AI who does that? Also with like the pixels in Figma, I don't know if there is a plugin who does that. Maybe, maybe not.
Yeah.
So yeah,
100%. I
a lot
think
of
that's
questions.
such a lovely point as well, because I when I'm like, yeah, using ChatGPT or Gemini or yeah, any of the AI tools that are responding back, there was this author, I have to look up his name, Mo something, and he wrote a book. I think it was like The Happiness Code or Happy Life. And he worked at Google for a long time, working in training AI. And he said this statement around, we should never forget that right now we are training the AI. Like, and that just changed my whole perspective. I was like, when it says something and it doesn't make sense, I could just ignore it and do another prompt, but I go, did you know da 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 da? Or actually, it wouldn't do that. Or and I still say thank you.
It's so
People
nice.
people argue about that. It's like, oh, don't waste your time. You don't need to. But I'm like, but if this is a growing dynamic thing, I want the AIs of the future that are going to be, super intelligent one day to be polite. I want them
Yeah,
to learn the best parts of humanity, even if that takes me a bit longer. So
yeah,
yeah, I think it's important to be kind to our AI systems, and
it's true.
definitely like if you have Alexa, there's some really funny stories about older people having Alexa in their homes and shouting at them like, "Stop telling me what to do!" if they get a reminder saying like, "It's time to take your tablets." Um, and it's like, really, we should be going, thank you, and speak to them how you would speak to a person.
Yeah,
Because that's what we if they're going to be our co-pilots, we want them, yeah, to be nice.
I
Surely.
agree.
Yeah.
100, but this is such a good point that we are still training AI and it learns so much from us and the way how we behave and interact with the interactions. And I
Yeah.
also feel like if you're friendly, you get better responses somehow. I don't know. I mean, I haven't done any research on it, but I feel like if you say thank you and be polite, also the large language models are nicer to you somehow. Not sure if that's
Yeah.
right, but I think it
Yeah.
doesn't harm to say thank you from time to time.
Yeah. Surely we're putting good into the universe by speaking to it that way
Yeah,
or
I
feeding
mean,
back. That was great. Thank you. That really helped me. Thank you. Oh, it's good.
but I know that there are some studies around. If you say, for example, this is a super important request, please, take extra care of it or so, then the response gets better, which is
Yeah.
fascinating, right? So you can kind of tweak it. And I feel like being nice and like, prompting right, not like technical prompting, but like, I don't know, like, yeah, copywriting prompting can make a huge difference. Yeah,
Yeah.
super
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah. Love
Um,
that.
Do you use tools like Google Gemini on a daily basis in your design team?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, well, obviously on Google, we do a lot of designed experience. We're shaping like yeah, the future of AI for a lot of their products. So we have to, yeah, spend a good amount of time playing with it as well as implementing it
Yeah.
in the website. So yeah, I think it's really interesting to see how much it has grown, and yeah, the different journeys that yeah, different AI tools are taking. There's Claude as well, that is kind of more, I think, UK based. So yeah, I think they're all going to have slightly different personalities,
Hmm.
which I think is only a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And even their different models have different personalities. If you look at ChatGPT, they have like all these different models, and some is good at math, the other one is good at like doing research for you. And I think that's pretty interesting, like to basically pick the personality type that works for you. right? So
Yeah,
you can choose and like having different coworkers. If you have a, I don't know, data
that's a
science
good way.
questions, you wouldn't go to like a junior UX designer probably, but to a data scientist. So I
That's
think
true.
that's so interesting, especially if we think of like collaboration, because I feel like this is also a part of like collaboration, like integrating the tools somehow and fostering this culture of, I don't know, like working together somehow with AI, with people. And this is a big challenge, I feel, for every team right now, but a lot of learnings as well on the go, a lot of iteration as well. So yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
fascinating. So I'm curious. I mean, you talked a lot about huge how you work with AI, and I think like from my perspective, it sounds fascinating, like such a nice environment to work and to explore. What would you say? Because I know also right now is like a time where a lot of designers, a lot of layoffs, a lot of people are also looking for jobs and opportunities. What would you say? What does a good designer needs to bring to the table nowadays to really be successful or to get hired at Huge, for example?
It's a good question. You know, it's it's really just about doing great work. I don't think that formula and criteria goes away.
Hmm.
And it's tough because people sort of go, well, I've done this project and I showed I can do this. Um, but it's like, you know, the passion has to be oozing out of every element of
Yeah.
you, it's like it's hard. It's super tough. It's super competitive for a reason, which is again why I always think of tennis because, if you're a pro tennis player, it's competitive environment. And that's it. I think sometimes we forget that. And there's lots of places where we can be very happy designing and be brilliant at having a creative fulfillment. But if your eyes were on somewhere like Huge, I think it's just got to be oozing out of you. And sometimes, you'll meet someone on a call and you just know within 5 minutes like how they're showed up, presenting themselves, presenting the work, like they just the level of care and love is just ever present. And then yeah, like the side projects and the things that you're doing, it's like it's not really a job you're looking for. It's just like your way of being, and you want to be surrounded by other people in that
Yeah.
space. I think those are the people who end up being, successful and coming in and doing incredible work. And yeah, you just got to be utterly fearless and completely immersed in what you do, love what you do, and just stay in that wonderful space and don't let any distractions or fear creep in to sway you away from that, because I think there are many people who, yeah, everyone, has that ability to work at a place like Huge. It's just how much you can dedicate that focus and direction and passion into the right space.
Hmm.
And yeah, and sometimes the level of upskilling required is tough, and people are like, well, how do I have the time to do this? And there are no shortcuts. That's the problem. That's the reality. It's kind of we've got to make the time. We've got to be disciplined and come together as well. I think that helps. It's a bit like a book club, isn't it? People
Hmm.
want to read a book, they don't have the time, but suddenly this wonderful thing happens when five people agree to read a book. It just suddenly you've managed to do it. And even if you didn't, you join together and you learn something, or you get the summary of the thing that you wanted to do. And I think, yeah, as designers, we kind of got to take that kind of mantra or way of doing on board. But yeah, it is a super tough time, and I think um it's it's really, yeah, about kind of showing up as as best that you possibly can, and keep the belief. There are still so many agencies, so many brands, and yeah, I think it's a wonderful career, and so many people can go out and do incredible things on their own, and in freelance world, it's fascinating to see yeah, the different kind of models of modes of working, through the gig economy and things like that as well.
Yeah. Um, I think like very motivating what you just said, and such a good reminder for designers because it's not so much about like luck. Of course, it's also about the craft and the skills, but like the dedication and the love for the work, this is something that you can't fake. I mean, you can try to fake it, but people will notice very, very fast. And there's nothing better to have people in your team who actually care, who are excited about what they're doing, who you don't need to like force, let's do that, but who are proactive and
Yeah,
excited about things. And I feel like, and I can totally agree because those people, they get successful sooner or later. If they don't, get ill or something, they will get successful because like people love working with them. They will create great products. And I
yeah,
think also this feeling is something that you can foster a little bit by, imagine like you have horrible workspace. You don't like the clients, the teams, everything's horrible. You can still do
yeah,
side projects, what you mentioned, right? Like you can still do your own stuff or like join this book club, like find other designers and create your own design challenges and work on them and like share it maybe online. So we are
yeah,
living in such a great time where you can still foster this feeling of care.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, we
good,
can't
good
we
reminder.
can't lose that element of positivity and showing up. And yeah, I hear you mention sort of like client struggles, and people, everyone has been there, right? We've all
Mhm.
had those situations where it's difficult, but I always say to the team, like, feedback is a gift. If the client is happy, they don't feedback. And yes, we do, there are clients who feel completely unreasonable, but if you love what you do and you want the best for what, you just got to go through it. And your whole team will be rallying around you, like supporting. And it's not like you'll have to be in that, you know for years and years. It's a moment in time, and I think it's so important for, yeah, designers to feel empowered to build that resilience.
Mhm.
um the only thing we can do to push those situations forward is to go through it. It's like, right, okay, 9 o'clock, I'm just gonna go through this. I mean, I've had times where it's like a whole email, like a scroll of feedback. I went, right,
Wonderful.
I'm making my cup of tea. I'm going to sit here. I'm going to go through every single piece. I'm going to color code it. I am going to absolutely nail this feedback. And I think it's hard. It's hard to get yourself to that spirit some days. But like I said, there's no shortcuts. It's the only way. It's the only
Yeah.
way through.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's so true. And also, there is nothing better than working with people who take also the feedback that you're giving them seriously. They are like, oh,
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, I get your point. And who are not trying to defend themselves of like, yeah, 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 but I personally think this and that. No, 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 no. Right? Like what you mentioned in the beginning of the interview, like listen first. It all comes back to like collaboration and
Yeah.
feedback and listening and understanding and being curious. This is sometimes abstract, and I think people forget how important this actually
Yeah.
is to become successful. And it's not all about the crafts and like doing another Figma course and doing this and that, but really building that mindset for success. This is something that you keep with yourself your whole career, probably.
Yeah.
So yeah,
That's a really good
fascinating.
point as well. And I think when it's internal, I think it's a game of trust. And I
Hmm.
find it fascinating to see like certain streams or Slack channels where it's like complete harmony. We're not very hierarchical at Huge, but of course there has to be, in any kind of dynamic, like someone who's sort of leading a process and others who are contributing and making it excellent. But if there's a moment where people lose the trust or the belief, it's so important, as if you're the lead on that project, that you have to take the moment to listen, at least, and respond, because if you plow through, you lose the spirit of the team. And yeah, it's super interesting, like those nuanced kind of ways of working, and yeah, seeing what works and what doesn't. But I think it fundamentally comes down to yeah, how much we trust each other. I trust that my lead is making the right decision. I like this direction we're going in. Like, we kind of need that at every kind of step of the journey, which is
Yeah.
hard.
It's hard, but also fascinating times. Lot of changes, lot of things to keep up to date and to like immerse yourself in. I feel like
Yeah.
we could continue forever. I think it's fascinating to chat with you about all those things, and I still have so many questions. But maybe to like come more or less to like an end of this episode. What kind of resources would you recommend designers to check out? Do you have anything that you would maybe recommend to have a look at for designers?
Yeah, there's a few things. I think obviously we've spoken quite a bit about AI, and I think there's elements of AI coming through like as its own kind of entity, as well as product design AI and that kind of world. But I think it's nice to holistically just like learn how AI is growing. So there's a wonderful kind of like a prominent figure in the AI world called Fifi Lee, and she's brilliant with research, and she's done a AI TED Talk that's super great, and she does a lot of initiatives around diversity inclusion in AI, which I think is super important as well. I've always been a big fan of Medium, but I've never like really gotten into it until recently. And I think because we're at this stage of learning, um, rapid learning around AI and integration with design, it's become like a really fun tool. And yeah, kind of looking up different topics. And I've recently committed to writing a piece like once a month, and first piece has gone out this month, which is super exciting, around product design in the age of AI. Um, and then, yeah, there's a couple of newsletters that I follow, but one that I thought was worth mentioning is the Rundown AI, which gives like a 5 minute update on the latest kind of AI news. I always seem to get a lot more from that than maybe some others that I follow. And then the last one is a bit of an oldie but a goodie, a book by Paul Arden, who is an incredible art director. It's called It's Not How Good You Are, but How Good You Want to Be,
Mm,
which was probably the first book that tapped into a mindset change, I think, for me. And I think, yeah, with so much change and almost responsibility of like growth of learning, I think it's like a good one little manual to come back to, and yeah, kind of hear different antidotes and principles around how we can yeah, like have a positive mindset around things.
wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing all the resources. I will definitely link it in the show notes so people can check it out.
Great.
And where can listeners find you in case they have a questions or they want to connect? What is the best place to reach you?
Yeah, I think LinkedIn is good, and Instagram, and still play on there quite a bit. And then Medium. Those are probably the three I'd say. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, great. I will link everything in the show notes so people can follow you, connect, have a look at the Medium article, and see what you're going to post next month. Also excited for that. Super nice. Jade, thank you so much for being in the podcast, for sharing everything so openly. I also had a lot of learnings and like light bulb moments, so super inspiring. Thank you so much for being here, and yeah, talk to you soon.
Thank you so much.
Awesome.